if you were to especially talk to the new investor getting started, maybe doing their first duplex conversion, what advice would you give them that maybe you would have liked to receive when you got started?
I think, well, in terms of advice, definitely do your due diligence, learn enough about what you want to do.
Yeah.
Definitely don't spend like forever just researching and analyzing properties because you could do that forever and you won't pull a trigger. But definitely just do enough research so you're comfortable with what you want to do and surround yourself with the team that can help you do that, right? Because I had you and your team to help me with this decision, and then you guys helped me fill in a lot of gaps and numbers that I needed to make this decision. So yeah, definitely just do your work and make a decision when you have the numbers that you need.
I know one of the challenges was when we were getting started. Initially, you were looking at self-managing the renovation, and then you decided to hire a general contractor. Why don't we talk through that decision and that thought process? So if someone else is looking at doing a duplex conversion and wants to self-manage it, what kind of advice would you give them in terms of what to expect and in terms of, is it a good idea? Is it not? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's definitely with my intention was to self-manage, contractors and all that stuff, and definitely did not work out that way. But well, first of all, my wife and I decided to do a Western road trip, so definitely cannot self-manage from there. But on the other hand, when we came back and I got back into the project, really understood how much work involved it took, and being 2 hours away from Welland, definitely not ideal and quite hard to self-manage on that end unless I live there. But yeah, I would definitely, do your research and do what makes sense for your investment. If self-managing is what works for you and you're capable of it, then do it, but I wouldn't advise to first-time investors to self-manage because I think you'll end up spending more on it, self-managing, than if you were to hire out and leave it to the professionals.
Yeah, it is very specific to the investor, especially some of my clients, their regular day job involves them managing contractors, trades, and if they're in the construction department of major companies or whatever, right? Then it's something within their comfort zone. It's what they're good at, right? But for someone without experience, I mean, you had some experience though. You did a basement renovation, so this wasn't your first renovation by any means, but it definitely is a lot more work than people necessarily think it is. Like the work itself is not that complicated in terms of what needs to be done, but it's just coordinating between the trades, making sure there's a flow to the work so that each step doesn't delay the next step, having people lined up. There's definitely a lot that it's easy to look at it and say that, hey, I can do it myself, and maybe you can, but definitely when a professional does it, there's a lot more, things tend to move smoother and tend to move faster, right?
Yeah, it's not just that. It's let's say you hire a bunch of trades to come and do the work, but after one trade is done, you're not sure if they did it correctly or to what the city requires.
Yeah.
So the next trade will come in and be like, hey, this is not done properly.
Yeah.
And so then that kind of snowballs and delays everything, right? So having a professional, they can check the work to make sure it's done properly so that you don't have to wonder if this was done properly or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. Like a few of my clients that are trying to split up the work, they've had better luck with finding a plumber, electrician, those skilled trades, but then having just the one guy or the one team to do all the carpentry. So framing, drywall, insulation, just everything, and paint, mudding, taping, paint, from start to finish. Because what happens when you find a framer and a different drywaller and a different painter, everyone's telling you the last guy didn't do their job fully, so now they have extra work, right? So it kind of snowballs exactly like you said. So what I've seen have more success is just have the one guy or the one team that just takes it from start to finish, so that any work they don't do in one step is extra work for them at the next step, so they will do it, right? So
yeah,
that's a good point. That's a very good point, actually. On this project, actually, were there any cost overruns? Were there any places where you had to spend money that you didn't expect to spend it?
Yeah, I think there was one. We hired a framer that apparently do the separation properly between the
Oh,
two
okay.
units. So when the next trade came in, be like, hey, I've seen this work done before. It was not done correctly. So
Yeah.
had to hire a different trade for it to fix
Yeah.
that error. And so that was unexpected. But you learn, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's also another good piece of advice. It's when you're looking for trades, it's worth asking them, have they done this type of work, but also specifically for projects that are a legal basement suite where there's fire separation requirements, there's requirements the city is going to look for. And I think that makes a big difference. I was actually at my project just yesterday, and I was speaking to the contractor who was there doing the fire separation, and he was sort of telling me in advance that, you know what, the city is going to look for X, Y, and Z. The fire separating the 5/8 drywall needs to go up to the concrete, and right now there's insulation. That gap won't pass, and so they're almost looking for what the city's going to ask them.
yeah,
Right? So that goes a long way when they know what they're doing. Then you kind of have a little team of Jordan who gets the drawings done. He puts all the requirements, but the contractor still needs to know how to implement those requirements and get it done, right? So
yep.
your building inspector, was he pretty straightforward? So how was that experience with him?
It was good. I mean, and he was pretty straightforward with what
Yeah.
he was looking for. And if there was any deficiencies, then he would tell me like what I need to do to kind of get around that or fix that. So yeah, I mean, it was great. It was great working with our building inspector.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big thing that I feel many investors may overlook. It's the city you're investing in, especially when you're doing a duplex conversion. How friendly is the city to that type of project, right? Because we both know there are many cities where you can do a legal basement apartment, but the city, the planning department, the building inspectors may just make it much harder to work with. And yeah, what we found with Welland is they're much more straightforward. They're still a city, right? So they're not going to be perfect, but in the scheme of different cities, the Welland is one of the cities where we find it's far more straightforward. Their inspectors are not there trying to give us a hard time. They're just there to inspect the work, and yeah, many times it's much faster to get them out to the property, inspect it, approve it, just move on to the next stage, right? So
Yeah, I would say this process with Wellham's department, it's like night and day compared to the other basement apartment I've done. The other one was probably like a 6 month delay just because, they
wow.
weren't getting, they said it was okay. And then a few months later, it's not okay. And so go back and redo the work. And yeah, it
Yeah.
was just crazy. But yeah, like you said, working with the building inspector here has been pretty great. Things went smoothly because of that.
Awesome, awesome. So what's next for you, John? You mentioned that you've recently got more into options trading, right? Like, why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, even before that, my wife and I have kind of dabbled in different things, just learning different ways of more passive investing and or just generating more monthly cash flow outside of our regular jobs, because maybe it can one day replace it, right? So, I mean, yeah, I've only been doing it for, let's say, a month and a half.
Okay,
Um, I've gotten pretty good returns. I would
okay.
say better than my real estate so far, but
From a
it's still
percentage basis, right?
percentage and dollar basis.
Really?
I mean, with the option trading, it really depends on what you start off with as
Okay,
a investment. But I started off with about 50 grand as a trading portfolio, as a
okay,
trading balance, and I would say it's done more in a year's worth than one of my investment properties from a cash flow perspective.
okay. Understood, understood.
Right. So
It definitely hasn't made more in terms of equity compared to like your
no,
Welland.
no. I'm strictly basing off of like cash
The
flow.
cash flow. Got it,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, that
Um,
makes sense. That makes sense.
yeah. But yeah, it's still learning. I'm still learning, and I'll see where it takes me, right? So, but the plan is, not to replace real estate. It's
Mm,
to supplement it, right? So the cash flow
yeah.
that I get from options trading, it's going to help me fund my next deal.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, no, even myself, I've been looking into not options trading, but I've been looking a lot more into index funds, just the boring kind, right? The broad-based like diversified ETFs. And it's something that I don't know. I also see there's especially for real estate investors, as a function of being a real estate investor, we tend to be very concentrated, right? All of our net worth is in like a few specific rental properties in one geographic area or a couple of geographic areas. And I think that's part of it, right? You can't diversify it away. It's intrinsically part of being a real estate investor, and we do get compensated for it, right? Our returns are pretty good from, especially from an equity standpoint. But in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is great, but let's create a buffer of some kind. Let's not put everything in this. So even for me, I've been looking more into to filling up like my RSPs, TFSAs, and just putting them into index funds, just to force myself like to be slightly disciplined in just putting some money in something other than real estate. Yeah, it's anyways, I'm also just getting started in that. I just started actually in March, just putting a little bit, and then I think from the summer I started to do a little bit more of that. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah, just kind of something to have on the side working for me, right? So yeah, this was a great chat. Any last words of advice to a new investor or just someone thinking about getting started in real estate investing?
Yeah, I would just say, surround yourself with the right people. I've worked with a bunch of contractors, a bunch of realtors, different areas. They were all great, but I wouldn't use the same agent that I used to buy my principal residence as this project, right? So
Yeah.
um, they wouldn't be able to tell me, comparable rents, terms like ARV, they wouldn't know what that is. Working with, a team like yours really helps me fill in the gap of what I need to know to be able to make the decisions that I did. Because if it weren't for what your team provided, I wouldn't be here today with this project today. So
Mm.
yeah, just surround yourself with the right team, and they'll hopefully be able to take care of you.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I feel like when I got started, that was my story as well, right? When I got started as an investor, I was working with a realtor as well who was investment focused. It allowed me to get, like, from the information standpoint, up to, I would say, 70%. I always say 70% is like that's how much you need, and then that last 30, you just can't get it without taking action, right? But having the right people around me at that time, it gave me some confidence to know that, you know they are looking at my situation and telling me this is a good investment, and they have the experience of owning rentals themselves, right? So it allowed me the confidence of moving forward, knowing that I may not know everything, but they're looking out for me as well. They're looking at it from the perspective of having that experience, and I could kind of, I didn't fully trust myself in making this decision, but I was like, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. They're telling me it makes sense, and I think it makes sense. So it gave me that confidence just to get started. And then you learn, you make a whole lot of mistakes, and you learn a whole lot right after that first one. But it's definitely, yeah, it's such a big one to take action without having everything lined up, without knowing all the details, and just
Yeah,
trusting that you've done your due diligence, you've got most of the things in line, and then just that last 30%, I think you just can't learn it without taking action, right? So
exactly.
good stuff, man. Awesome. So really appreciate you jumping on this Zoom call with me, and hope we meet again sometime in the new year. And until then, have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, I guess.
Yeah, you
All
too. Take care, man.
right, John. Awesome.
All
Have a
right.
good one.
See
Okay.
you.
Take care.
Bye.